Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney back with you. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Mr. Hatch. How are we doing?
Doing well.
And you are fresh off going to a race and prepping to go to another race.
Yeah, went to the Gallagher Grand Prix last weekend at IMS. Weather was not too terrible compared to the previous road course race in May, and to be fair, even last year.
True.
And then Nashville again this weekend, where the weather does not look so promising.
Could add a different dynamic to that race.
We shall see. A street race in the rain, that would be fascinating.
It wouldn't be good for attendance, but it would definitely be good for intrigue, I feel.
Absolutely. Which, to be fair, last year was not lacking for intrigue.
True.
We shall see. But this week, we'll recap last weekend's Gallagher Grand Prix at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Of course, we'll preview the Music City Grand Prix coming up this weekend in Nashville. We have a contract announcement as well, plus more updates on the ongoing lawsuit between Alex Palou and his management and Chip Ganassi Racing. That's all to come on this week's episode, but as always, time for our 3 takeaways from the Gallagher Grand Prix won this past weekend at Indianapolis Motor Speedway by Alexander Rossi.
Hey, how about that? I lay into him and then he responds.
Yes.
That's how it works, folks.
So obviously my first takeaway is Rossi getting his first win since Road America 2019. And there's all kind of crazy stats about this. What was it? 49 races, right? That it was a
49,
winless streak for Rossi, and for Andretti Autosport, it's their second win of the season, which, look, that puts him in line with Ganassi.
Yeah, right.
So,
and we talk so much about how great Ganassi has been. So,
yeah, Ganassi only with 2 wins on the season. Andretti now matches them with their second win of the season. But I think for Rossi, look, he qualified well. This is a track he admittedly does not like, and he qualified well. He put himself in position, was consistently up front. Colton Herta had the issue, which they still don't know what that issue was. There's been no confirmation. He was saying on the radio something about the clutch not picking up, but
that's unsettling going into another race weekend, right?
Yeah.
Not really sure what the problem was.
But all in all, Rossi gets the win. He had been knocking on the door, to be fair. It feels like since right after the Indy 500 that he had kind of been an actual contender most weeks. So it's finally happened. It's over. He even said in the post-race interview that he felt more relieved than excited, and rightfully so. It's been a while, but I think just quite simply, he's back in the win column. He can move forward. He gets that monkey off his back, especially as he heads to a new team next year. And everything you said about, when's it going to happen? Well, it happened last week, so we can move forward.
Congratulations to Rossi for getting that win. And look, I was hard on him last episode. I still stand by what I said, but I think it now changes the outlook for Alexander Rossi now going to McLaren. You mentioned it, really more relief than excitement in winning this. And now it's going to even be an even bigger or cleaner slate going to McLaren. He's not going to have this cloud over him that he hasn't won in 3+ years. It was a boring drive, you could say, for Alexander Rossi, and that was a good thing last week at IMS. No team issues. You mentioned Colton Herta, he had issues, but Andretti Autosport gave him a good car, good pit stops. He continued to hit his marks, drove away for the field, was really under no threat in the last, 25 or so laps. They tried to make some drama there late with, some smoke or whatever, but it was all to do about nothing. And Rossi gets the win, gets the streak to end, and has to feel as relieved as he has in quite some time now entering Nashville this week.
Yeah, this from Chad 200 as far as some notes on Rossi's last win compared to now. So first win in 1,133 days. Half of the drivers in that last race in 2019 no longer racing in the series. David Malukas was 17. The top box office movie was Aladdin. Is the remake.
Not the cartoon one.
Yeah, correct. The top Billboard song was Old Town Road.
Which I guess isn't cool anymore. That comes on the radio on my Spotify or whatever. My son's like, this is not a good song.
That had its moment.
Yeah.
And also, no one had ever heard of COVID-19. Yeah, that's how It's been since Rossi's last win. Now, we would be remiss if we did not mention what became of the win post-race. There's a penalty. The team fined $25,000. Rossi docked 20 points, and the entrant also as well. They ran afoul of post-race inspection. Had to do with the water bottle, where they used the water bottle weight with it with
as
liquid.
ballast, yeah.
Yes. And so not a disqualification. This seems more like an infraction and not an egregious thing.
Right.
But I mean, you can't mention the win without mentioning that.
And in the big scheme of things, I don't think it was anything too nefarious in terms of trying to gain an edge, whether they were like, whatever, didn't know it or misread the rule. I don't think it gave Alexander Rossi the difference in winning the race or anything like that. But a rule is a rule. Got punished. If he was in a championship race, it would be, I think, a bigger story in terms of docking points, which makes me wonder if IndyCar would have given him the same stiff punishment if he was indeed in a championship race. But it's still a win. There's no asterisk. He didn't get it stripped like, in NASCAR and Cup a couple weeks ago. So a win for Rossi. And now we head into Nashville, and place where maybe, Colton Herta can keep it going in terms of Andretti Autosport dominance.
What's your first takeaway?
Well, let's talk about the crossover weekend. And you were down there. You had boots on the ground, so to speak. I had the view from my couch watching on television. I really liked Dale Jr. both in the pre-race and in the early parts of the race on Saturday in the booth. Forza crowd, but I feel like he adds a different dynamic that maybe is missing a little bit in that booth. And when you looked at the crowds, and you can talk to me about crowds for Saturday against Sunday, and overall, it always seems like we're always finding things wrong with this weekend. Oh, we're back at IMS again. I'm one of those guys on the road course, but in terms of everybody getting together, it's always cool to me to see the NASCAR guys on the pit boxes and asking questions and vice versa. I think it's good for North American motorsport, and who knows if it's a long-term thing, but that is one positive I get out of it, kind of seeing those guys interact.
Yeah, I guess that aspect's positive. Otherwise, it just, IndyCar is an afterthought, to the point that Connor Daly even tweeted before this whole weekend last week, talking about, he was talking to some of his NASCAR friends. Some of them didn't even know IndyCar was racing that weekend at the track. There was a press conference for a sponsor announcement for Ryan Blaney at the same time as the IndyCar warm-up Saturday morning.
But I do feel it is the warm-up, right? I mean, IndyCar isn't the main show for this weekend. So you can try to spin it all you want for Connor Daly and IndyCar and all that, but it's not the main show. It's on Saturday. It's before the Xfinity race.
Yeah,
so,
but could they do something in the future? Nathan Brown had a good article, kind of column in IndyStar.com saying, could they move IndyCar to Sunday, be earlier, like 12:30, and then have Cup later in the afternoon?
I think it's really tough with tire compounds and everything.
Yeah, I think
NASCAR
that is
to agree to that.
That's the one issue with all that, right? Is the tire compounds, because Xfinity's not going to go race at IRP. I mean, IRP was lucky to get trucks back, and that they had a great crowd.
Yeah, great crowd at IRP. Look, I would be perfectly fine if this race went away for IndyCar. To be honest, it's the least exciting race of the year. We've already been to the road course. You're playing second fiddle to Cup or NASCAR, and that's fine. So to me, look, IndyCar owns IMS for an entire month, right? So I don't feel like they're getting shortchanged, or it's unfair that they don't get, top billing or close to top billing in late July, early August, or whatever it is. So that doesn't really bother me. It's just, it's kind of a boring race to me. We've already done this. There's hardly anybody there. There's no anticipation of, this is starting the month to then get into the 500. There's just no excitement for me, in terms of this weekend. So, I pointed out some positives that I like about the weekend, but it doesn't outweigh the negatives.
Yeah. And look, I think if they were to find another race that could fit in that date or around then, they would scrap this in a heartbeat.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, look, I'd rather them race it at IMS a second time on the road course than only have 16 races. But at the same time, I would love to find a 17th race let's say IndyCar adds one race next year, and it sounds like, they're not, but let's say they do. Instead of going to 18 races, I would strip this race and just drop back to 17, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how little it means to me.
I agree. And many people pointed this out, and I can confirm it in person, that the crowd on Saturday was starting to fill in at the end of the IndyCar race for the Xfinity race. I'm not even kidding you.
But, it's traditionally Brickyard weekend, right? I know it moves around, but, it is a NASCAR event. NASCAR fans only have one chance to see stock cars at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And you can debate, whether they're better in the oval or the road course, but that's facts. And there are straight up NASCAR only fans in this state. That's fine. And their only opportunity, like I said, to see those cars at the track is on Brickyard weekend. So I don't really mind it. I'm fine for IndyCar to be a quote unquote warm up. I feel like it's not a relationship that I would foster, because people were saying, oh, let's see IndyCar and Cup team up at Gateway. Well, guess which one's going to get top billing at Gateway? It's going to be NASCAR. It's going to be Cup. Anywhere. Do it at Road America. Cup will get top billing. That's just how it is. More people watch, more people go.
Well, Cup's not back at Road America, so we don't have to worry about that.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want more of these, IndyCar, NASCAR doubleheaders or whatever, IndyCar is never going to be the main event.
No, it would be great though if they could at least be in a better time slot than Xfinity.
That said, 1 million people tuned in, so it worked on TV being at noon on a Saturday.
That part worked. Xfinity got a much higher rating. Not that that's surprising. You're on later in the day, you're going to get a better rating.
I feel too, part of this, and look, I know 1 million people tuned in, but to me, look, I love IndyCar, but at this point of the season where we're on fourth straight weekend of races, man, it's a grind.
Well, and it doesn't help that it's not like an exciting event.
It's not. We've already been there, done that, right? In May.
It's not Nashville this weekend. It is
right.
Much more exciting. You go to a very popular city. It's a street circuit. You had a lot of chaos in the race last year. You want to see how year 2 is going to go on and off the track. They had some issues off track that I think are fixed.
Yeah.
From everything I've read, because, well, I'm in Grandstand 6, the infamous grandstand from last year. Last year I wasn't
ready yet.
Yeah, I was not in that stand last year, but this year I am. So everything looks good going forward. Obviously, the weather does not, but it's not an exciting event, as you mentioned. The road course race. It's good that they got another title sponsor, and the racing for this event better than I would have expected going into it.
I agree. I mean, but you look at this string of races, and there was excitement going back to Toronto, being there for the first time in 3 years, right? And then, of course, the Hy-Vee weekend at Iowa, really exciting. We're going into Nashville for the second time, and a lot of excitement there. Squeezed in amidst all those races was a return to IMS. It was like, it's almost a deflating weekend, no matter how you spin it. When we talk about exciting race weekends for IndyCar, just doesn't do it for me.
Feels like a support series and not even a major level series.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's cliche, every time you race at the Speedway, it means something, and to be there is always special. No, I don't buy into that. I mean, when there's hardly anybody there, it's just, it's the same place, but it feels different, and even different from the May event, because it's, the precursor to bigger and better things on the oval.
At least we get the fun crowd estimates out of the weekend. How many people were there? 25,000, 60,000? We'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know. And they'll never tell either. So, it's just an interesting weekend. Who knows how long it lasts, how long it goes forward. There's discussion with Cup. Do they start alternating, the oval and the road course? If they do adopt the oval, go back to the oval, even if they go back and forth, what does that do for IndyCar logistically racing there? I mean, do they want to race on the road course on Saturday and then change things back to the configuration for the oval on Sunday? But you also have to factor in Cup practice, right? So if Cup and IMS come to a deal where they're alternating or even go back to the oval full time, what does that do for the weekend for IndyCar because they're not going to do a second oval event at the Speedway.
Absolutely not.
So we'll see. But what's your number 2 out of this race?
All right. There are several things I thought of, but first, let's bring up Meyer-Shank Racing.
It's not been good.
No, it is not. And I was reading Marshall Pruitt's article talking about Meyer-Shank Racing wanting to rebound. And Michael Shank himself is saying, look, there are no excuses. And that's how he operates. All right. But I didn't realize this. Jack Harvey last year, 13th in points. And they're not even at that level in points when you look at it. And just a really bad weekend. Now, Simon Pagenaud is 13th right now, but he's coming off. They ran him out of fuel. So bad strategy.
Yeah, which
call.
is, how does that happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we bash Andretti Autosport a lot, but they haven't ran out of fuel.
And then you have Elio Castroneves get a penalty as well in the race for avoidable contact in an incident. It was deserved, but it's just another bad weekend. Is they were a non-factor. Elio 19th, he's 18th in points, and.
Can I say that's kind of where I expected him to be? Yeah,
you can say that. And I guess I expected a little bit higher. And by higher, I mean like top 15. But it's just, it's been a struggle. And Simon Pagenaud, I mean, he's shown some promise and had a string of good results. Obviously, great result at the Indy GP, where he's second in the rain, but he's had 3 straight bad races. Elio has had 4 straight races outside the top 10. It's been a struggle. We expect both drivers to be back next year, but overall, I think it's easy to say going in that it's disappointing, especially with Pagenaud on his results. We figured he could maybe get a win this year, and that didn't seem outside the question, but the season's kind of getting away from him right now.
Just 1 top 5 for Pagenaud and 13 starts. This is a lineup that going into the season, I felt wasn't conducive to success throughout the season for Meyer-Shank. You're seeing a lot of teams, they partner a veteran with a rookie or a veteran with a younger guy. And I was shocked when Elio Castroneves signed for a full season. I understand why it happened because of the 4th Indy 500 win. But I thought at most he's an oval only guy. I just don't think at this stage in his career, Elio Castroneves, and he showed it the last couple of years with Penske, can be a championship contender, right? And then with Pagenaud, he hasn't lived up to expectations, but you felt like maybe if he was the alpha, if he was the veteran to somebody else's youth, then maybe that'd be a good dichotomy. I don't know where Meyer-Shank is in terms of where they're at mentally and on track. And it sounds like Elio's back next year full time, which kind of feels like spinning your wheels at this point. Like, has Elio all of a sudden become a championship contender in 2023? I don't think so.
And it's not like these are drivers that aren't familiar with one another. They are Team Penske teammates. Like, you don't need to worry about continuity because they're already familiar. They've worked together for several years in the past. Right. So that's also a non-factor. When you look at what Michael Shank's idea was, he's bringing in 2 proven race winners, Indianapolis 500 winners, in terms of, championship contenders in their history, right? Pagenaud won a title, and the results haven't been there. I think maybe this is a lineup that's 3 years past its prime, potentially. I think if you go back to 2019, 2018, this feels like a really good lineup, but this feels like how do I put it nicely? It's the franchise in baseball that signs 2 aging veterans to try to eke out every last bit of potential and talent they have. And it just hasn't worked for Meyer-Shank. It's like the Steelers running it back with Roethlisberger again last year.
Right? And going one more year.
Have one more shot. I guess that's the way I look at it.
And I feel part of that goes back to that, in terms of Elio with that 4th Indy 500 win. Totally. I mean, I'm sure sponsorship money was great. Like, yeah, we're on board for a year. Let's do it. Let's go for 5. That's great. Unfortunately, there's 16 other races other than the Indianapolis 500. And Elio, for the majority of those, has been a non-factor. And I feel like I don't know in terms of setup if they can't trade a lot of info. I don't know. It's very much a lost season for Meyer Shank Racing at this point.
What's your second takeaway?
Oh, let's look at my second takeaway. And, it was a whirlwind week, right, for Joseph Newgarden. For him to finish where he finished, was it fifth?
Fifth, yes.
Impressive drive, and you have to feel pretty good after bouncing back from Iowa 2. Is he sitting there, 32 points behind Will Power, so still in the running. And what was, this time last week, we weren't sure if Joseph, with an F, not a PH, was even going to be able to race at IMS. Comes out, has a solid weekend, and brings it home fifth, still in the title race.
And also, during the race, had a little bit of adversity, if you will, to overcome. You got a track limits violation, which I thought, right, that's a new one.
Which I don't know if they ever showed, and they said what turn complex it was, but I don't think they ever showed the egregious error. But it's by timing. So they were explaining it, there's a sensor, and if you trip that sensor, it's a penalty. So it was a cut and dry violation. It wasn't a judgment call, but was able to fight back and finish fifth.
Yeah, and like you said, he's able to race from the first session. I mean, it looked like he was back to his old self. He was competitive. Firestone Fast 6, I think, was running as high as second at one point. But overall, a good race for him and a good bounce back with another top 5.
Very, very impressive. But what is your number 3?
All right. I feel like I bring this up almost every race, but let's talk race control.
Okay. What you got?
So Colton Herta, he has the issue, tries to bring it into the pits. He's coasting in and stops basically just past the entrance of pit lane.
Seems to be not a best case scenario.
No. And I understand that a lot of the other cars had recently pitted, but look, he's an obstacle on the course, and there's no yellow for a car that's just sitting at the entrance of pit road. If someone has an issue, they have to avoid him. To me, that feels like a safety hazard.
He is a not moving chicane, is what you're saying, instead of a moving chicane. Look, this is it. I don't like I understand the rule or the not rule. Basically, let everybody pit so nobody gets burned. But at the same time, one of these days it's going to result in a crash or something.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying somebody's going to get seriously hurt or somebody don't necessarily need that to change the rule, but something's going to happen where they feel, okay, he's sufficiently off the driving line, and then somebody else is going to lose it in the same area and have a crash to where they're going to be like, look, we have to throw the yellow as soon as possible. Because, I understand there has been a lot of complaining from drivers and teams that they get burned on the yellow, but that's racing, right? Yeah. So they're waiting, but at some point it's going to be the wrong call, and you just hope somebody doesn't get hurt.
I just don't like that there's a car, the entrance to the pits, just sitting there.
All you need is somebody to come in and cook the tires and, even a wiggle, and you're getting into Herta.
Like, this is another situation where, okay, they made a judgment call. It was fine, but like you said, one of these times it's not going to be fine. To me, and to be fair, I've not dove into the rule book and seen what the rules say, but to me, common sense would be you throw a yellow if a car is stopped on track, and to me, that includes pit lane when the track is green.
Now, does this lead
when it's a hazard?
Right. Does this lead into a virtual safety car situation? Virtual caution?
They've talked about it, but it doesn't seem like they're going to do that.
Would that alleviate some of the issues?
Maybe.
I'm not smart enough to know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. Were you surprised they didn't throw a yellow for that?
Because no, I'm not surprised anymore, because that's just how IndyCar race control operates. Is no matter, unless it's some huge issue, they're not going to throw the caution until everybody pits. They're just not. And some non-calls are more egregious than others, and I felt like this one was, you were in a danger zone, and like I said, eventually it's going to result in something not very good happening.
Yeah, which, look, this came a few laps after Simon Pagenaud ran out of fuel and they had a caution.
Right.
So again, this wasn't going to screw anyone over as far as the race strategy goes. It just, to me, it felt like another situation where a yellow should have been thrown. And I thought, okay, they're letting everyone go. And then they just kept racing. And I was like, okay, interesting move.
It feels like race control, when there's an incident with a car, are more concerned on all the other cars on track and not the car involved or the situation involved. They're more, okay, there's a car slowing or stopping. Where is everybody at on their pit cycle? Instead of, is this a danger?
Yeah.
Right?
Safety first, right?
Yeah, safety first. Instead, they're finishing. They're scared about dealing with the upset team or driver after the race because they got burned on pit strategy because when the caution flew. That's racing, right?
That used to happen all the time in IndyCar. And to be honest, yes, it was frustrating if your
it added different dynamic.
Driver or team were screwed by it, but also it made road and street courses more of a wild card.
Absolutely. I agree.
And I think we're missing that. All right. What's your third takeaway?
Well, let's talk Rookie of the Year race right now. And we had a couple good drives over the weekend. Malukas was good again. Eilert was good again. And we look at Christian Lundgaard now in first still in terms of the Rookie of the Year race. And you have Malukas just 27 points behind. It's really just a 2-horse race. But looking back, when we look at how we rated the rookies at the beginning of the season, when we went in, Caleb, and we said, Kyle Kirkwood, most talented of the bunch, right? We talked Lundgaard maybe as that second guy. And then a lot of question marks. Eilert had shown potential. Malukas. I mean, I thought we talked less about Malukas than we did Devlin DeFrancesco because we felt maybe Devlin was a year too early.
Yes.
Malukas was kind of that throw-in, right?
Yeah, Malukas was second in lights. We kind of forget that. I mean, he won a lot of races in lights, so we should have seen this coming, but a rookie on one of the smaller teams, I guess the expectations are a little bit lower.
And you look at the last 5 results for David Malukas: 9th, 12th, 14th, 8th, 13th.
Really solid.
Really solid. I mean, when you look at Meyer Shank, they could use some consistency like that from a young driver. Instead, they have 2 aging guys that are going around. And, where does Meyer Shank go in terms of development over the next couple of years? Because they're locked in with those same 2 guys. So when we look at how we judged the rookie class entering the season to now, it's either going to be Lundgaard or Malukas, Rookie of the Year. And Kyle Kirkwood is significantly behind even Devlin DeFrancesco, 18 points behind in terms of being last in the rookie standings.
Well, and I remember we both took Lundgaard only because we knew he'd have better equipment.
Because we're smart. But we didn't feel like Kirkwood would be this far out of it.
No, we thought, look, Kirkwood hasn't had a finish better than 15th going back to Long Beach, which was his lone top 10 of the season where he finished 10th. Outside of that, 15th is his best finish on the year. That was in Iowa 1 where there were no mistakes and they got through the race. And he had another bad weekend at the Indy GP. Look, I really hope for his sake and the team's sake that they improve because they really need that leader circle money. I mean, are we talking about a coin team if they can't get some results in these final 4 races? Or sorry, coin Foyt team. Yeah. They can't get results in these final 4 races. Like, does the team not move forward?
They completely miss out on leader circle money.
For 2 entries.
But they entered the season with 3 full-time entries, and they could end the year with 0 leader circle money. Benched 1 entry, the other 2 could finish out of the leader circle.
And that's
terrible.
We expect 1 to finish out just because Kellett's so far behind. I mean, he'd have to go on a tear his final handful of races to get back in contention.
Yeah, he's 30 points behind Kirkwood. But when we look at Kyle Kirkwood, how much do we judge his performance or lack thereof on the team he's with, and how much do we hold him responsible for? And that could be a question that doesn't get completely answered until next season.
I would put it right now at 50-50. I mean, he's shown flashes, but he's made mistakes. Then the team's also made mistakes.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. But I feel like the rookie class is a lot about what we expected, but there's also some surprises in there. So that was my number 3.
Yeah, and I just want to add a little bit more on Lundgaard. Look, a podium. He had another good result. What, a Firestone Fast 6? I haven't done the math. Was that the first Firestone Fast Six of the season for the Rahal team?
May have been.
I mean,
I feel like
that's something to keep in mind.
And if anybody else did it, I'd say Lundgaard did it somewhere else.
Because you look at what he's done. He was 6th in qualifying. You go back to, I'm trying to see like another race, for example, what he was able to do. Didn't do it at Toronto. And that was kind of where they started to get some better results for the first time. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that badly needed some good qualifying and a good result. And Lundgaard's kind of been that guy as far as qualifying goes to get results.
And now when you look at it, you look at him being about 26 points behind Graham Rahal in the points. So could Christian Lundgaard make a push to be the highest finishing driver in the points for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan?
It's quite possible.
Right?
Like legitimately, it is quite possible. And I'm looking through qualifying results and I'm not seeing Rahal and any other Rahal drivers on any other the timesheets. So again, feel free to correct us if we're wrong, but I'm not seeing it. Overall, though, a great run for him. Graham Rahal has struggled in qualifying per usual, but went 17th to 7th on the grid. Another good result for him. Jack Harvey, unfortunately, another struggling day as he finished in 20th. But the qualifying pace is improving for this team. Now it's getting consistency in the finishing results.
We'll see if they can take another small step forward this weekend in Nashville.
For sure. Looking at just some other notable results from Nashville. Will Power, another podium. So I was looking this up and I was shocked. Will Power has either been top 4 or outside the top 10. He doesn't have a single top 10 finish
from
all
5th
year.
to 10.
They're all top 5s, and then obviously he has the win at Detroit, which is crazy. 15th in the 500, 19th at Road America, 15th at Toronto. He has 0 top 10 finishes. They're all within the top 5 or a win.
All right, we talk about feast or famine with Joseph Newgarden. Same with Will Power.
And you look at Power and his stats. I saw this from Ryan Marine of IndyCar Radio talking about what he's done on the season. Through the first 13 races of the IndyCar season, Will Power's average finishing position, 6.1, better than his average starting position, 9.1. That has happened only once before in 16 full-time IndyCar Champ Car seasons. That one year, 2014, the year of his lone championship.
How about that?
So something to keep in mind. He's having a great year. Yes, he's only won one race, but he's been so consistent. And in fact, 3 straight top 3 finishes. I mean, that's hard to combat. Marcus Ericsson, who fell back to 2nd, 8th, 6th, and 11th in the past 3 races. So Power's just on another level right now.
And sitting now with a 9-point points lead heading into Nashville weekend, leading Marcus Ericsson.
Taking a look at some other notes from the weekend. Obviously, TV ratings, you mentioned earlier, they got above 1 million.
A magic number.
0.67 for the rating, 1.046 million as far as TV viewers. Then total audience delivery, which includes Peacock, 1.07 million. I forgot about this. The race last year was on NBCSN, 522,000 viewers. There had to have been some conflict because the Xfinity race last year was on NBC as well.
Right. Must maybe a golf or something was going on.
Very weird that they didn't have the race on NBC last year. So TV rating positive, got above 1 million. That's all that matters.
Yep.
And I think that kind of says it all as far as what they got out of the weekend. So that number, here's, I think, the key takeaway on the TV side. This is from NBC Sports PR. So we have an update on the season.
Okay.
So they are up 105% versus last year's race on NBCSN. Okay, well, duh. Of course it's going to be up. I think the notable thing, most watched IndyCar season through 12 races since 2016, up 6% versus last year.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I said double digits.
Correct.
Needs to be 10% or above.
Yes.
Considering the amount of races on network.
Now, with 3 of the 4 remaining races on NBC, right?
That should help. Strong. Yeah.
Gateway is on USA Network.
Because usually
there's a chance.
the last several races of the season traditionally are not on cable.
Yeah.
That West Coast swing, I don't think was ever on on network.
So you have Laguna Seca and Portland. That'll be on NBC, Gateway on USA, and then Nashville on NBC. So you have a chance to really boost that number, especially going to some good markets. And again, you're finishing the season largely not impacted by the NFL. September 11th is the first NFL weekend, right?
Right.
So yes, you have that, but it's a West Coast race, so you're outside of the East Coast NFL 1 p.m. time slot, right? So that should help as well.
Finish strong and get to that 10% growth. I think that would be big.
Yeah, I think that is ultimately the goal. So there's a little bit of crossover for Laguna Seca, 3 p.m. Of course, that's not the start time for the race. That's just TV coverage, I would guess 3:30-ish. So a little bit of crossover, but not much when you're talking about those 1 p.m. NFL games.
Correct. But I also think, once again, noon start, but what was it, 12:25-ish around the green flag. Those early starts, man, Saturday and Sunday, I feel are good.
And this race got a better rating than the GMR Grand Prix in May, which had 998,000 viewers. Now that's excluding the Peacock numbers for that.
How about that?
Something you take away.
Sure.
All right. Any other takeaways or notes you want to mention from the weekend?
I don't think so. I think, once again, congratulations to Alexander Rossi, and I was glad that I could be the catalyst to have that happen last week. I'll take sole credit.
You do that. Also, one other note, Sage Karam, 13th in the Xfinity race. So a good run for him.
Not too bad.
Really good run. Last year he was running up front, and I think he got involved in a crash. This year, though, able to keep it up front, and a good run for him. So, all right. We mentioned we also have contract stuff to get to. Rinus VeeKay confirmed in a multi-year deal with Ed Carpenter Racing.
Contracts mean nothing. Now,
multi-year deal, though, means a lot because there are a lot of known free agents up in 2024.
I think Rinus VeeKay is safe for next year of 2023. If he goes out and wins multiple races at ECR next year, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody buys out that contract and hires him.
Yeah, I think next year with the stability of the team, look, they found something in the second half of the season after kind of struggling in the middle outside of Daly's good runs in Indianapolis in May. And I think they'll keep returning their form. This is a team that I would think could win a race or two next year.
Rinus VeeKay had the opportunity this year to impress some big teams and get an opportunity to go to a bigger operation in IndyCar. That didn't happen. Now he has a chance next year to do that with some continuity with ECR moving forward. He didn't take advantage of it this year, and I'm not saying it's all entirely his fault, with his team as well, but I feel like him being a hot commodity entering the season, that's kind of cooled over the course of this year based on his performance.
Yes, and he had that great run at Barber where he won the pole, right, but didn't win the race. And then after that, it's kind of been up and down, but a sixth last weekend in the Indy GP, a good run for him.
Yep.
So he's back with his team. I don't think it's a huge surprise because we never really heard anything about Ganassi being interested for him in the 10 car to begin with. We heard it all about for him in that McLaren seat that, well, we thought went to Alex Palou, but we'll see.
Who knows what's going on at this point. But, Rinus VeeKay can come back, finish top 10 in points next year, maybe get a win, maybe two. I feel like he could really be somebody that a team is looking to buy out and hire for 2024.
And Chad 200 pointing this out on Twitter. Rinus VeeKay, the longest tenured full-time driver in the team's 11-year history.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
And it's not very long either.
No, it's crazy.
Pretty wild.
All right, back to, speaking of Alex Palou, let's talk Alex Palou, the latest.
Once it gets into the legalese, I rapidly lose interest.
Yes. So they will have this case go to federal court. There is some sort of hearing that's coming up, I think, next week to discuss everything in the case between Chip Ganassi Racing and Palou and ALPA Racing, which are named in the suit. The plan is for there to be some sort of hearing. I want to say August 9th. August 9th, I believe, is that hearing. So after that, that's all we know, but it will stay in federal court. That is essentially where we're at.
Yeah, this may drag on for a little bit, at least till somebody blinks or whatever, because this is not going to be cheap. Once the courts get involved and you're paying court fees and all this stuff, it's just, increases the cost for everyone. So I think going forward, this could be a 2-week thing. It could be a 2-month thing. Who knows at this point? But Alex Palou, his circle of friends, I feel, in the IndyCar paddock has been shrinking over this entire situation.
Yeah, it's not helped. And with all this, everything's still sealed. So outside of the press release and the tweets, we're not gonna learn anything new.
And good to see Oscar Piastri going to the Alex Palou school of tweeting in terms of not confirming a contract.
Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Is McLaren involved in that one?
Reports say yes.
Oh, man. Here we go.
And Nathan Brown pointing this out as far as the filing, agrees diversity of citizenship, parties from multiple states, countries exists. It's part of the reason the case should be heard in federal court. Also, they agree broadly that more than $75,000 is at stake. None of these are surprises.
Yeah. Sure. I guess we'll wait when it's spit out of the legal system at the end. I just, if it comes to the back and forth in the media and social media, I'm all here for that. But once the courts get involved, I rapidly fall asleep. Yes.
All right. Let's preview this weekend's Big Machine at Music City Grand Prix.
Let's go. Some changes on the course.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have course changes. I think before we even get that far, though, the green tire makes its debut this weekend.
Ooh, yeah, the green tire.
So the alternate tire from Firestone will be Firestone Greens. I'm not sure how to say this word, Guayel
It's a
tire.
plant that grows in the Southwest. I know that.
Yes. So that will make its debut. We'll see how that goes this weekend. You mentioned course changes as well. Marshall Pruitt of Racer.com discussing this in a recent story. None of these changes are big surprises. Restarts moved to another turn, basically as they come off the Korean Veterans Bridge that feeds into turn 9. That will be the restart zone as well. So that will help with the restarts that were chaotic.
Cluster, yeah.
Last year. The large bump in turn 5, that's been repaved. The wide section entering turn 9 has been narrowed to 50 feet for more hospitality suites. The previously narrow turn 11, which Colton Herta was the only one to seemingly figure that one out last year, that corner has been widened by 6 feet at the apex. And they've also done work to soften the transitions on and off the bridge as well because of the hard bottoming issues they had last year. So all good changes. No porpoising to worry about here.
Just, after the first time having a street course, these are obviously things that you take from year one, and how do you do for year 2 to make things better? So we'll see how it goes. Good moves, because I felt like coming out of it, last year, people just kind of wanted to complain about what didn't work as opposed to what did. So this will go a long way towards solving that, and hopefully Grandstand 6 gets put up by the weekend, because Caleb Hatch will be assigned Grandstand 6.
Well, I've seen some reports from local media in Nashville. The stand is done. So that is positive.
Whew.
It's good to go. In fact, Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal, Sports Business Daily, pulling this article, but they expect combined attendance 110 to 120,000 people over the weekend. At a great crowd last year. I've been looking at ticket sales just to see where things are at.
Yeah.
And outside of Grandstand 6 and 7, which I would say they're probably about 75 to 80% sold at this point. Everything else is close, if not sold out, as far as the stands go for Sunday.
Good to see. Hopefully the weather holds for you.
Yes. As the ultimate question mark for this weekend, the weather. 3 key stats from Chad Smith on Twitter. Chad200. Driver starting in second position this season has won 7 of the 13 races. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Passion has only led a total of 12 laps of the last 36.
Ooh.
Penske has led 53% of the laps this season, 915 of 1,723. I mean, it's hard to do event-specific stats when you have one event to compare it from, but those are some season stats to look at. Plus, 26 entries this year as Prado Autosport returns with their partnership with Ed Carpenter Racing. Simona Di Silvestro will be in the 16 car, and they have a new primary sponsor, Acumatica Cloud ERP is the name of the company, a cloud-based enterprise resource planning software company.
I don't know what that means.
I don't either, but a sponsor is a sponsor.
But the people that need to know. And we saw Prado Autosport take some big leaps forward from race 1 to race 2. Hopefully we see that now in race 3, the final race of the season for Prado Autosport.
And also a change on Indy Lights as they are back. James Rowe joining HMD Motorsports.
Everybody's joining HMD.
Yes. On the lights side, TJ Speed without a driver for Nashville. They'll likely skip the round. That's from F1 Feeder
Series. You're going down. You may as well just jump in a seat.
Yeah, if I bring a big enough check, which I don't think I have. But that's a look at some of the changes on the circuit and what to expect this year for that event. And with that, I'd say it's time we get into our race picks.
Am I going first?
Yeah.
Do I go? I deviated from Penske last week, and it did not work out. So do I stick with Penske again this week, or do I go elsewhere? I am going to stick with... No, you know what? I'm going Colton Herta.
I'm going to go with Colton Herta as well, actually, just because I think he'll redeem himself. He was so much faster than everyone else at this track last year. I get that in year 2, people will catch up. Plus, they made some changes to the track, as we mentioned. But it feels like he's due for a win. He was probably going to win that race last week, if not for whatever that issue was. I mean, yes, Rossi was in second, but it's not like he was close. Colton Herta was on his own race, running his own pace, looked set for a win until that happened.
Alexander Rossi was able to exercise the demons, so to speak. Andretti Autosport as well, at least with the Rossi camp last week. You look at Herta, if he can have a clean weekend, if the team can have a clean weekend, I like his chances.
So taking a look at the schedule for the weekend for IndyCar on Friday, August 5th, practice 1, all these times are Eastern. So if you're in Nashville, go forward an hour, or I guess it'd be go back an hour.
Back an hour
for Central time.
Central, yeah.
4:15 to 5:30 Eastern, practice 1. Then on Saturday, practice 2, 12:15 to 1:15, and then qualifying starts at 4:30 and goes until 5:45 on Saturday afternoon. The warm up 10:15 to 10:45 in the morning, Sunday morning Eastern time, and then the TV window 3 to 6 p.m. NBC, Peacock, IndyCar Live for international. Plus, you can listen on Sirius XM and IndyCar Radio as well. Green flag, approximately 3:15 or so. So a shorter pre-race, kind of intermediate.
Yeah, I think the sweet spot of pre-races. When you look at the odds heading into this weekend, Caleb, who has the best odds per DraftKings entering Friday?
I would guess Newgarden.
Joseph Newgarden at plus 450 is tops, followed by Pato O'Ward at plus 500. You have 2 drivers at plus 600, Will Power and Colton Herta. Scott Dixon and Alex Palou at plus 900 round out, the top 5 or 6 there. Rossi and Ericsson behind at a plus 1,000. Who has the steepest odds to win this weekend?
Simona
and Dalton Kellett at plus 100,000, which means if you bet $5 on either of those drivers and they win, you cash in $5,000. But I don't see that happening.
No, I don't. I don't see either of them winning unless there's some crazy strategy. We haven't had a Carlos Huertas type race.
We haven't in a while, right? So I wonder what the odds were for Carlos Huertas to Houston to win that race.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I'm sure they were astronomical.
But it's happened before. I just don't see it happening this weekend.
No, nor do I. All right, if you agree or disagree with our picks or thoughts on the Gallagher Grand Prix, we'd love for you to interact with us. You can find us on social media. Our Twitter handle is IndyCar Podcast. On Facebook, like us, just search for New Track Record. On Instagram, our handle is IndyCar Podcast as well. You can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, concerns, rants, all accepted. And you can find us on the web, newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, check out the store page. We have stickers and shirts for sale. Also, sign up for our email list so you never miss an episode or any special announcements for the podcast. And you can find us on Patreon. Thanks to Xavier and Rob and others who have signed up and are supporting us. We have 4 different tiers, starting with as little as just $1 a month. And as always, listen in on your favorite podcasting platform, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean, or wherever you find your podcasts, all for free. Okay, Justin, mailbag time. And we start with Rate the Race, the Gallagher Grand Prix. What's your number?
I gave it a 6.5.
I would agree.
Okay.
All
Gosh,
right.
we're both picking Colton Herta. We're both giving the race the same grade. We're just in sync this week.
Yes. Responses on Twitter. Jeremy from HBG, and this is a paragraph, so bear with me. 6.5 looked like the race in the field was better than we were seeing, but I watched on delay, so no timing and scoring to confirm that. Quick couple other points. Every time I heard Diffie say Gallagher, it sounded like Gallagher to me.
Well, that's
I would love the Gallagher GP. Colton Herta is overly aggressive on what has been proven as fragile equipment. He could be a champion if he quit breaking his cars. Connor Daly has a massive case of pot kettle syndrome after his comments on DeFrancesco during the race. How people like a grown-up entitled frat boy being sponsored by a crypto scam. I just don't quite understand. Wow.
I mean, is that it?
No, there's more.
Oh, okay. Keep going, then I'll comment.
Leave on a high note. I watched on Peacock via delay. No commercials at all after the pre-race. Just edit marks. Did the My Stuff thing to skip the navigation through the spoilerific menu. Good experience. Would do that again if I couldn't watch live. Now, if they could do a static upcoming race info to frame the picture in pictures that get edited out, that would be awesome. End.
And in terms of the Daly DeFrancesco thing, I didn't feel like Devlin did anything wrong there. So
I would agree.
Connor was like, said he doesn't belong in the series and everything, and you're like, I mean,
he's had some questionable moves.
Certain people could say that about you, kind of thing. I mean, it's just, look, we see egregious stuff all the time on track. I didn't feel like that was egregious. That was hard racing and taking the line a little wide to block him, basically. I didn't see anything wrong with that.
I agree.
I will say, too, in terms of Peacock, and one thing we've mentioned, and this happened at Iowa, in terms of trying to jump in a race live and try to rewind it, which you can't do on Peacock. The same thing on ESPN Plus with Formula One races. Can't rewind. So if Formula One can't do it, if you're not doing it in Formula One and ESPN, I can live with it. It's not something that other people have that IndyCar doesn't, at least through their streaming platform.
Yes. This from Poet Shevchenko. He gave it a 1.
Woo!
Race control is just doing whatever it wants now, and I see crew members running to pit entrance to push a car out of the way, and the pits are still open. Something has gone way too far.
And to your point, yes.
According to Sitch, give it a 6. Watching the timing screen, the race throughout the field seemed more exciting what was presented on TV. The first half of the race I thought was very entertaining and interesting. But then after Herta's car gave out after that, I mean, that was it.
I'll admit, with 25 to go, I cheated and saw who won the race and then kind of casually fast forward a little bit here and there.
You missed nothing.
It was not an exciting second half of that race.
Daniel SCM 2004 gave it a 5. Typical IMS road course race, boring. Like having Rossi finally break his streak. Vicky Lynn 26, 9. As a Rossi fan, I loved it. So great to see him finally get the W. I thought there were some good battles happening through the field. 3 of my picks for fantasy were 1, 2, 3 at the end. Overall, I had fun watching it. Hunter's Way 67. As a Rossi fan myself, a 10. As a race fan in general, a 6. I am analog, a 5. I don't know how many times in the short time I've been following IndyCar, seen a herd of DNF. It seems like every other race it's something. Good day for Penske too. Transocean Trojan. I know, guess it's just me, but my definition of a good race seems to be very different from most people. I see high marks from a lot of people for bland racing, and then we get a race like this that had 3 separate legit leaders changing hands in quick succession, and people don't like it. But to answer the question, I'd say 8.5. Enjoyed all the drivers charging from the back early on in the drama. It didn't kind of mellow out at the end and seem like the podium was a foregone conclusion after that last round of pit stops. Early action made up for it, in my opinion, though. Racer Mac RTP1 gave it a 6. Had some elements of entertainment, but got largely status quo by IMS road course standards. Cool to see Rossi in a drought, though. Great day for Lundgaard 2. Sig Domer gave it a 4. Hero IndyCar gave it a 3.
Man.
Jeff Cerneski gave it an 8. Some passing, some cautions, no more questions about when will Rossi win a race. Aaron M 1978, maybe a 7. Indy Oreo gave it a 4.5. How
about that?
So as a look at rate the race for the Gallagher Grand Prix, some other mailbag submissions. This on the Alex Palou, Oscar Piastri, and then McLaren in the middle with handshakes. I posted that. Poet Shevchenko says, how many drivers have McLaren secretly signed? Scuba Steve 85. I'm starting to wonder if I should make sure I'm not driving for McLaren in 2023. Bill Hessa, this is a joke, right? What is happening? Not a joke. Trackside Marty says McLaren is going to end up with more drivers than seats. At this rate, yeah, it kind of looks like it.
It's all part of the plan for McLaren. What that plan is, I have no idea, but they have a plan.
We will find out. We're not sure. All right, on the court case with Alex Palou moving to federal court, Jeremy from HBG. Yeah, we all know this will end in some kind of a settlement before discovery. It all just is about who blinks first. Poet Shevchenko with a gif of Billy Mays, the OxyClean guy. But wait, there's more.
Classic.
NK Harden. Seems like each party wants Alex out of the seat this year, but neither one is going to be the one that pulls the trigger. And instead, just continue this escalating steering contest. We all get to enjoy it.
That's the big thing. I hope it continues all the way up to Laguna Seca.
Some people had some snide remarks on your comments last week on Rossi. This is after Rossi won the race. Hunter's Way 67. Take that, Justin.
Much deserved, yes.
One Bodicher. I apologize for, I'm sure, mispronouncing that. Rossi must have listened to the podcast this week.
Hey, I took credit for it, guys. I solely responsible for that victory. You're welcome, Rossi Nation.
This from the Roth. I've been waiting on Lundgaard to do something this year, so thanks. It's the Office Space manager from the movie Office Space with the the suspenders.
Yep.
Need you to come in on Saturday. That'd be great.
Lumberg. Mm-hmm.
Yes, correct. All right, on the schedule. So Marshall Pruitt had this article, racer.com. Next year's schedule, the same. That's what we were expecting. However, some options in play for 2024. A return to the legendary Milwaukee Mile is on the table, along with a trip south to Mexico. No specific track said to be targeted at the moment. We obviously talked about Monterey.
Well, the fact that
the other week,
but the fact in that story, Pruitt mentions that the IndyCar would like to add an oval. Would they be talking about that oval in Mexico?
The Pueblo or Puebla? Yeah,
Puebla,
I don't think so.
So I'm not sure, but it makes sense to try to get to Mexico. You just hope Pato O'Ward is still around.
Hunter's Way 67 says, I thought IndyCar Deep Threat said Homestead was in play. Yeah, we've heard that past couple years, but it seems to be off the radar now.
It's still so weird. It almost goes week to week with Milwaukee, right? It's nothing, and then there's something in the works to there's nothing to maybe there's something. I'll believe it when I see it on the schedule.
NK Harden says, IndyCar, where nothing is happening next year, but everything is always happening in 2 years.
I mean, it's a good point.
Yeah. It's very true. Thanks to the shout out from Save Jackson 32. It's a great addition to my toolbox. Thanks for the sticker, guys. You are welcome. And let's see, a couple other things on the mailbag. Here we go. So this from Bauer Racing tagging us. Thanks for the heads up. But Racing with Rich Energy, the tell-all book investigating the saga of the Rich Energy Haas F1 team, coming fall of 2022.
Somebody's writing a book on it?
Yes, Alanis King. Pre-orders open, McFarlandBooks.com.
Sign me up.
So there we go. That's
I saw William's
story.
William's story of Rich Energy taking to the socials to give his take on the F1 drama. I don't know if people care.
No.
It's always kind of comedic when he talks about breaking contracts and lying and all that stuff.
All right, so that wraps up the mailbag. As always, send us your tweets, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, emails, snail mail, what have you. All right, news and notes. Not a whole lot to get to in this section. We start. Logan Sargent will make his F1 practice debut at COTA for Williams in Austin. Remember, he was looking at joining the Foyt team a couple of years ago.
Yeah, still, I feel with the added emphasis on America, obviously in Formula One, 3 races coming next year, Logan Sargent's going to get a shot in Formula One as a full-time driver with somebody.
I feel like it'll be Williams for next year. We'll see. Hopefully the practice session goes well.
Was it Sargent and Albon for Williams?
Yeah, possibly. We'll see. Hy-Vee, they're going to open another store in the Indianapolis area. They already have plans for a store in Zionsville. Now they've applied for a permit for a location in Fishers.
Do they currently have no locations?
Correct.
In Indy? Okay.
Jimmy Johnson had this quote that was interesting in the Tennessean.
This is very interesting that I think kind of flew under the radar.
Even the IndyCar full-time schedule is a bit of a stretch. This year with IndyCar and IMSA, I'm at 21 races, and I'm feeling a little more busy than I want to be.
I feel like that to me tells me that Jimmy Johnson would entertain doing ovals only for IndyCar. I mean, as part of that article too, he talked about returning to NASCAR at some point.
Yeah.
So returning to NASCAR, not out of the question. And I feel like I'm doing too many races now, basically tells me he would pick and choose some NASCAR races to do and couple that with an oval only schedule for IndyCar. Could that be as soon as next year? I don't know.
Sebastian Bourdais, this from Jack Binion of We Are the Race. A lot of people penciling him in for the 10 car for next year. However, Bourdais says, my future is very simple. It's Cadillac. That's about as clear as it gets. So do not expect to see Bourdais full-time in IndyCar next year.
We see Ryan Hunter-Reay potentially.
Yeah, I think that's the stopgap if they're going to do that. IMSA, speaking of sports cars, will return to IMS in 2023. We teased that last week. It'll be a 2-hour, 40-minute race. They plan for an endurance race in 2024 and beyond.
I think the endurance race will be cool. 6 to 8 hours. Talking about bringing in some lights in the infield. It'd be pretty cool.
Camping in the infield.
Yeah.
Some really cool features as part of that. And one other note, I think this is probably the most notable thing, Graham Rahal and Chip Ganassi pushing for IndyCar to enter Pittsburgh street race mix. Now, this is after NASCAR, or Pittsburgh officials had interest in NASCAR. And so this is from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. They're also pushing, and it makes sense. Chip Ganassi from Pittsburgh. He has offices in Pittsburgh.
I mean, sponsor, PNC, HQ in Pittsburgh. I think there's a lot to like. I think Pittsburgh, whoever sent the tweet out or whatever, they're naturally going to say, oh, we'd like a NASCAR race too. Not probably knowing that IndyCar is more known for their street races than NASCAR. We still don't know how it's going to turn out in Chicago. I feel the cars are so, if you watch the race on Sunday, even on the road course at Indy, the cars are so slow. And in Chicago, they're going to be so slow. And so, in terms of speed, in terms of exciting racing, IndyCar has it over NASCAR in terms of street race, unless you just want people crashing into each other, which I understand there's a certain amount of people out there that just want to see that.
Chip has apparently been in discussions with this since they built Acrisure, a.k.a. Heinz Field Stadium, back when that was built. So it's been a long time. We're looking at close to 20 years for that stadium around, or a race around that stadium. So Chip's been in discussions, but timing is kind of the issue. has to be between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Obviously, you don't want to be up against the Steelers as well, so that's kind of a non-starter. Obviously, they have to coordinate it with the Pirates as well. And PPG, we forgot about them, the Penske and Series sponsor as well.
I think there's a lot of potential there, and they have a lot of bridges. So we already see IndyCar on bridges in Nashville. A lot of potential for more bridge crossing in Pittsburgh.
All right, time for tweets of the week. And a lot of great commentary on Oscar Piastri and everything that went down. First off, from Felix Rosenquist, I had to double check. It's not 1st of April. Pato tweeted, Alexa play Deja Vu. Brock Bolton 77. Has this man approached you regarding a contract to drive for McLaren? If so, you may be entitled to compensation. Picture of Zach Brown. And then the best tweet was Alex Albon's announcement. I understand that with my agreement, Williams Racing have put out a press release this afternoon. And I'm driving for them next year. This is right. And I've signed a contract with Williams for 2023. I will be driving for Williams next year. Let's go.
But now we need confirmations of the confirmations.
Yeah.
Basically.
And then finally, there's one more. Santino Ferrucci misspelling Joseph's name, saying that he was glad that Newgarden's okay and will be able to race. Remember, Ferrucci on standby. And Joseph said, it's Joseph with his name spelled correctly. At Penske, we care about details.
The dig is so Newgarden-esque too.
Yes.
I love it.
All right. Random split air driver of the week time.
All right. We previewed last week. We were going to go to CART in 2005 for a treasure trove of names. And we're starting it off this week with Homero Richards, who raced in a single race for Champ Car back in 2005 with GTE HVM Racing in Mexico City. Why? Well, he's a native of Mexico City. He actually won back-to-back championships in the Latin American Formula Renault Championship in 2004, 2005. I know that you have all of those races on VHS somewhere, Caleb, and made his first and only Champ Car World Series start in 2005 at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez.
That's where they do the F1 race.
Yes. So he finished 16th in that race, which sounds great, but I don't know how many people started it. Let's check. 19. So he actually qualified last and finished 16th, namely because 3 guys went out of the race. He finished 1 lap behind. The winner of that race, Justin Wilson, in fact.
There you go. AJ Allmendinger in second, Paul Tracy in third, rounding out the podium. And he's sponsored by Nextel, which
right.
I had
a decent.
I had Nextel stock as a kid, so it made good money.
Nextel stock, really? Did you ever have the Nextel phone? You know, where you could it was like a walkie-talkie. You hit the
No,
thing? Okay.
I wish though.
Me neither. But finishing up on Homero Richards, 2006, he switched from open wheel to stock cars, started to compete in the NASCAR Corona Series. Never heard of it. But he also had Nextel sponsorship there for H&H Racing, a team he co-owns with his brother Horacio. In 2014, he switched from Nextel to Axtel M Racing, now races for Escuderia Grupo TOP in the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series. I don't think you can find that on Peacock.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I'd be curious if he's still actually racing in that series today.
But this week's random split era driver of the week, Homero Richards from Mexico City. One and done in Champ Car in 2005.
And someone, as we mentioned, I, of course, have not heard of.
The first of many from 2005 in Champ Car. Can't wait.
Yes. All right. Well, we will be back next week to recap the Music City GP on the streets of Nashville. For Justin Kinney, I'm Caleb Hatch. Thanks for joining us on another edition of New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.